Simon Magus. The people listened to him with indifference and mistrust, as a crowd listens to demagogues, seeking hidden meanings behind obscure words, for they were accustomed to hearing the authorities, the Pharisees, men with power, use sweet-sounding promises to conceal wiles, threats, and extortions, and expected this man too to declare his intentions, to stay at last why he had come, to give the reason for his empty words, his vague and confusing prattle. That is why they kept listening, and because they hoped he would cap his muddled remarks with an acrobatic trick or a miracle. The kingdom of heaven rests on a foundation of lies, Simon continued, staring into the merciless sun, and its roof has two slopes, white lies and black lies. The scriptures are composed of false words and mysterious laws, and each law is a lie. 10 laws, 10 lies. It is not enough that the Elohim is a tyrant, a vindictive tyrant, and as cross as a cluttery old man. No, they want everyone to venerate him, to fall at his feet, to think of nothing else but him, to call him that tyrant, the only, the one and the only, all-powerful and righteous God, and to submit to him alone. Who are they, O people of Samaria, these charlatans who came to you and fill your ears with lies and false promises? They are people who have secured his mercy for themselves and wish you to submit without a murmur, to suffer all the trials of existence, torments, pestilences, quakes, floods, plagues, without cursing him. Why else would he forbid you to take his name in vain? They are lies, all lies, I tell you. The things you hear from Peter and Paul, the white lies and the black lies of his disciples, they are all one big, dreadful hoax. Hence, thou shalt not kill. Killing is what he does. They're one and only, all-powerful and righteous God. He's the one who smites infants in their cradles and mothers in childbirth and toothless old men, killing in his vocation, whence thou shalt not kill. Leave the killing to him and his. They are the only ones called to it. They are destined to be wolves, you to be sheep. You must give yourselves up to the laws, whence thou shalt not commit adultery, that they may carry off the flower of thy womanhood, and whence thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods, for thou hast no reason to envy him. They demand everything of you, soul and body, spirits and thought, and give you promises in exchange for your current submission and your current prayers and your current silence. They give you a crazy quilt of false promises. They promise you the future, a future that does not exist. Simon did not notice, or merely pretended not to notice, that the people had dispersed and that his only remaining audience consisted of those who called themselves his disciples. All the while, his faithful companion, Sophia, had been weeping the sweat from his forehead and passing him a pitcher of water, which had turned lukewarm even though she had kept it deep in the sand. Sophia was a small woman about 30, with thick hair and dark eyes like sloes. Over her bright transparent cloak she wore colorful silk scarves, probably purchased in India. Simon's disciples describe her as the epitome of wisdom and feminine pulchritude, while the Christian pilgrims spread all sorts of rumors about her, namely that she was a flirt, a tramp, a tease, a hussy, and an impostor who had found grace in the eyes of her impostor of a companion in a Syrian brothel. Simon never denied her former life as a slave and concubine set him as an obvious example and lesson of Jehovah's brutality and the cruelty of this world. That fallen angel, that strange sheep, he maintained, was merely a victim of God's brutality. A pure soul imprisoned in human flesh, her spirit having migrated from centuries, from vessel to vessel, from body to body, from shadow to shadow. She was Lot's daughter, and she was Rachel, and she was fair Helen. In other words, the Greeks and the barbarians had admired a shadow and shed blood over a phantom. Her most recent incarnation had been as a prostitute in the Syrian boarding house. But meanwhile, Simon continued, having spit out a mouthful of the lukewarm water upon glimpsing a band of pilgrims in white cloaks emerging from the shade of the houses, many whom he recognized, Peter and his disciples, armed with shepherd's staffs. But meanwhile, beneath the murky shroud of the heavens, within the dark walls of the earth, and in the dungeon of existence, despise wealth as they teach you, deny the pleasures of the flesh and scorn woman, that cup of nectar, that urn of bliss, in the name of their false paradise and out of fear of their false hell, as if this life were not hell. Some choose the earthly kingdom, others the kingdom of heaven, said Peter, leaning on his staff with both hands. Only he who has no wealth may despise it, said Simon, squinting his larger eye at Peter. Only he who has known poverty may admire it. Only he who has experienced the pleasures of the flesh may deny them. The Son of God experienced suffering, said Peter. His miracles are proof of his righteousness, one of Peter's disciples interjected. Miracles are no proof of righteousness, Simon responded. Miracles serve as proof only for the gullible, the multitude. They are nothing but a craze introduced by your miserable Jew, the one who ended on the cross. Only he who has the power to perform miracles may speak as you do, Peter objected. Then Simon jumped down from the wobbly barrel and landed eye to eye with his challenger. I will now fly up to the sky, he said. I should like to see it, Peter replied, with a quiver in his voice. I know the extent of my power, said Simon, and I know I cannot reach the seventh heaven, but I shall go through 6. Only thou can reach the 7th, because the 7th heaven is all light and bliss is denied mortal man. Enough philosophizing, said one of Peter's disciples. If you reach even that cloud up there, we shall respect you as we do the Nazarene. Hearing that there were some unusual doings afoot just outside the village, near the large olive tree, and that the chatterbox was at last about to do one of his fakir's tricks, a crowd gathered round again. Don't be gone too long, one of the spectators called out mockingly. In fact, why not leave something behind as security? Simon unwound the flaxen rope from his waist and placed it at his feet. It is all I have. And Sophia said, take this scarf. It's cold up there, as cold as at the bottom of a well. And she put the scarf around his neck. These preparations are taking too long, said Peter. He is waiting for the sun to go down, added one of Peter's disciples, so he can run for it on the cover of the night. Goodbye, said Simon, kissing Sophia on the forehead. Farewell, said one of Peter's disciples. Watch out you don't catch cold. Suddenly Simon flapped his arms and pushed off the ground with both legs, like a cock raising a cloud of dust beneath his sandals. Cook-a-doodle-doo, a yokel cried, a smooth-cheeked young man with shrewd eyes that turned to slanting slits when he laughed. Simon glanced over his direction and said, it is no easy, my boy. The earth exerts a hold on all bodies, on the merest feather, to say nothing of a human wreck of some 200 pounds. Peter was unable to stifle his laughter at Simon's sophistry, and had to hide it in his beard. If you were as good at flying as you are at philosophy, said the joker, you'd be soaring through the clouds right now. Philosophizing is easier than flying, I admit, said Simon, with sorrow in his voice. Even you know how to chatter, though never once in your miserable life have you ventured yourself so much as a foot off the ground. And now let me collect my strength and my thoughts and focus on everything I have on the horror of our earthly existence, on the imperfection of the world, on the myriad lives torn asunder, on the beasts that devour one another, on the snake that bites a stag and it grazes in the shade, on the wolves that slaughter sheep, on the mantises that consume their males, on the bees that die once they sting, on the mothers who labor to bring us into the world, on the blind kittens children tossed into rivers, on the terror of the fish in the whale's entrails, on the terror of the beaching whale, and the sadness of an elephant dying of an old age, on the butterfly's fleeting joy, on the deceptive beauty of the flower, on the fleeting illusion of a lover's embrace, on the horror of split seed, on the impotence of the aging tiger, on the impotence of the aging tiger, on the rotting of teeth in the mouth, on the myriad dead leaves lying in the forest floor, on the fear of the fledgling when its mother pushes it out to the nest, on the infernal torture of the worm baking in the sun as if roasting in living fire, on the anguish of a lover's parting, on the horror known by lepers, on the hideous metamorphose of women's breasts, on wounds, on wounds, on the pain of the blind,